go too fast, you can slow me down again and tell me to back up or anyway, ask questions. You got it. A little bit about my audio history, I guess. Super quick. Why use a computer for audio? The audio layout, how I have it laid out here through the computer, mic to the computer to the rig and whatnot. How you set up Windows Sound. One of the important things here is video or virtual audio cables and repeaters to make it flexible. How you stitch it all together, doing some equalization, how you use your rig to tweak the microphone settings so you sound better in a contest, not necessarily conversational. Uh, how you can use the Stream Deck to control some of this is relatively new to me. And then Q&A, and I'm hoping to do a little bit of a demo. I have it set up the way this all works, since it's all through the computer. I can feed my rig audio into the Zoom session, and you can listen to. I have it set up here, so I'm transmitting on one radio into the dummy load or the other way around, and you can listen to the audio out of my received audio as I'm transmitting. So I can change the equalization, change mics, and you can kind of see how that sounds. So I did try it. The computer seems to be up to it. Sometimes there's CPU considerations with this whole uh, audio through the computer business. So how did I get here? I mean, a lot of us, when we first start out in ham radio, well, we're cheap by nature, but most of us are, at least I am. You start out, you don't have a lot of money. So I've got a, cheap microphone. I upgraded the microphone, and, I'm hooking up to N6TR at the time, which I helped code way back in the day. I stopped that about in 2003, but, and how do I record my audio on the fly, and so I can hit the F1 key and have my audio come out, and it's fine to control a rig or press the button on the rig, but how can I record on the fly? DVKs were an extra box, a little bit of a limited flexibility. Maybe in the 90s you can record maybe 4 messages or whatnot. And then Whiskey 9 Charlie Fox came out with a software DVK. It's like, holy crap, this is awesome stuff. I can go through my computer and record things on the fly. And a lot of you guys are very familiar with this, and you're going to get benefit out of different parts of this talk. But a lot of us have been using computer recorded audio for a while, and I just thrilled it could get it through the computer, and it was cheap. Right. So I kind of went from there, and I've since the late 90s, or mid 90s, I've been hooking up to all my audio's gone through the computer. So here we are. That's how I got here. So why use computer audio? I mean, some of this is pretty obvious, but you get your voice keying with real-time updates, so you can record your audio on the fly. And if you want to, you're working split on 40 meters, you can do a quick control shift, press a function key, and record your, listening 70757 kilo 1 Lima, contest, right? So you can, and if you have to change frequency, easy to update. Having everything go through the computer, my microphone goes into the computer and comes out into the rig. When you do that, you can, go to sideband, RTTY, AFSK RTTY, FT8, whatever audio mode you want, and you consistent levels into the radio because they're set by that one sound card output. You can run. You've got equalization that you can instantiate at the computer. I don't tend to do that, but that's a possibility. Easy to switch the audio modes. You can move from one to another without having to monkey around with plugging anything in or out. Remote operation is drop in. It's just as if you were at home. You can record your contest. There's one of the things about a virtual audio cable I'll talk about, where you can patch your audio into multiple audio sources into one place. You can stream if you want to do that. I wanted to do that for ARRLDX. I had a little bit of a hiccup, but that's the up and coming thing to promote contesting, is to have live contests, that are streaming and folks can kind of watch and get excited. And just general flexibility. So those are the key points. Now the cons, you guys can come up with others in this list too. I know there's a bunch of folks who's like, dude, I am not hooking my audio up to the computer, just not happening. I know a few of them. But you have to have your computer running. If your computer's not booted up or it crashes, your audio's gone, right? The initial setup, as you will see, might be a bit daunting, right? You've got to, set up the Windows sound and different inputs and outputs. Uh, and occasionally, but kind of rarely, Windows can monkey with your settings. So you reboot the computer, it did a Windows update. There's been some folks that have complained about that on Windows 11. I'm running 10 still. That the audio levels went out of whack. So writing that down and keeping track of it is worthwhile. But again, you can think of other reasons not to, and maybe other reasons too. So I'll pause there for a minute before I move into the meat of this. Any questions or things you want to hear me talk about that I haven't touched on yet? Silence is good.
Promise you I would try to set some of this up on my own system, my own computer here today, and I actually made a ton of progress. And actually, the more I use it, the more exciting it looks.
Yeah, right. It isn't like I said, I started this I was been hooked up to my computer since the 90s, so uh, it's a little second nature at the moment, but at first it's like, holy crap, how do you hook this up? So
Hmm.
that's what this picture is about. On the left side, I've got the physical layout. I had drawn this not for this talk. I drew this for myself a few years ago, and it's a little out of date. I don't have a 1000 MP anymore. I don't have a KX. I have the KX2. I take that remote, but a pair of K3s are here. The rest of it is pretty similar. But the way this is set up, if you look at my microphone, you guys can see my mouse, right?
Yep.
Okay. You see the microphone comes into one of my two sound cards that is set up in the computer. The mic comes into one sound card, comes out of that same sound card, and then goes into the microphone input onto my SO2R box. Right. So this is the Gazinta path, right? The microphone comes into the radio or into the computer. So that means there's access to other programs and whatever. It flows through that same card using an audio repeater, which we'll talk about. And then it comes out, and that's what goes into the microphone input here. This SO2R mic in is the adjustment. It's an output, and we'll cover this in a little more detail going forward, is an output that gets adjusted, and that's what you set your microphone input, your ALC is all generated by the levels on this output here. And then on the other side, on the listen side, you've got the radio output. Okay, so the micro or the headphones output from either of these two radios gets piped into the phone output of the SO2R box. That goes into the microphone in or line in of one of the second card, and then comes out as my headset. So that's the basic what it looks like physically connections. Uh, and then when you go off if you look at the virtual layout, this is a little more complicated. I don't know how clear this actually looks, but the Realtek sound, that's this card here, has the listen side. I've got the audio coming out of my SO2R box, goes into the sound card, and then there's some virtual cables that connect this audio to my rear speakers. So this loop here from the phones to the phones to the speakers or my headset is a virtual cable. I can choose my front speakers. I also have a duplicate virtual cable hooked up to the rear speakers, which is what my headset's plugged into. And then that also goes to an audio cable that I use to do contest recording. So my radio output goes into a contest record as well. On the mic side, right, it's a little more simple. I have the one loop back that takes the mic, a virtual audio cable or an audio repeater, connects the microphone in the physical microphone, the one I talked to here, right? This physical microphone into the computer microphone input. All right, that's the one. And then I also take that microphone and merge it into that same line one in or output that I can use to record. So it overlays the radio audio and my mic audio on the same output. So that's what I use to end up recording with. This is significantly complicated, I think. Questions?
What type of radio do you have?
I have a pair of K3s,
Okay.
Elecraft K3s.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Yeah.
Hey,
Oh,
Ron, what happens if you have if your radio has a sound card?
you could use that. Yeah, that's a maybe a little trickier, right? Because I mean, it is and isn't. I mean, it's a USB sound card. It's seen at the computer as a an output or an input into the rig, and there's an output from the rig. Uh, it's a little trickier, I think, to do two radio in that case. I haven't given that a ton of thought. I mean, one of my rigs does have a sound card built in, but I don't use it. I use the line in, excuse me, the mic in and the phones out from that into the SO2R box. But if you're using only a single one and you're not dealing with two radios, it's really would end up being the same thing. You've got this phone's output would be one of those uh, ports or devices, they call them actually, and the mic in would be the other. So you would uh, end up piping those into the computer's sound card. A little, I'd have to draw it out. It's a good question. I hadn't considered covering that in this talk, but I could you know, give it a little thought and wire something up. But it's a good question
Yeah.
and a common question now. But I mean, personally, I wouldn't use it. It's a little. There are a couple things with it that I talk about in a minute, but the reason I use, well, one of the reasons I use the same sound card for the mic in path and the phone's out path as a separate one is latency. If you have a pair of separate sound cards that are taking your output's going to come out of that sound card and have to go into the computer over USB, travel over a PCI bus, and then come out into another sound card, there is a little bit more delay there than if you would have, a tight loop like you have here on the same sound card. You can imagine the driver for that thing is gonna. It's like, oh, you want to listen to one of my ports? I'm just going to vector you there, so you get a much quicker turnaround time or lower latency through that path. When you're dealing with the sound card out at the rig, you're going to inherently have a little bit extra delay, I think.
Thanks.
I don't know if I properly answered that question or not, but I got to noodle on it a little bit. Any other questions on this one? Certainly, as I go forward, you're welcome to, bring me back to any place in this presentation. That's not a problem because a lot of them overlap a little bit. For the Windows sound setup, I talked about all the different inputs and outputs that are on there. In Windows 10, anyway, if you go down to the lower right-hand side of your screen or wherever you have your volume control, if you right-click on that, you'll see a sounds set point or sounds option, right? And you can open that. It's not the one at setups, the one that you would access through control panel. If you're in Windows, you have two ways to get to, ways to set up the computer. There's the setup and then there's control panel. If you go through control panel, one of those options is the sound system control. And you'll end up with something, with options that look like this. I've got the recording showing here, the record devices. Those are the inputs into sound cards. And then the playback devices, which are the outputs from those sound cards. When knowing that I want on my one of my cards is the Envy card and the other one is the Realtek. I would name those in ways that, if you double click on any of these devices that show up, you have the opportunity to name them. I think I show that a little bit later. Yeah, I do. So anyway, I talked about lowest latency, where on you want to have your mic path Gazinta and Gazata on one card and your listen path, the Gazinta and the Gazata on the other card. That gives you the lowest latency. So when you're listening to yourself, which you will, it'll only be maybe 20 milliseconds 30 milliseconds or so delayed. At least that's what it is for me. And it's not incredibly annoying. If you get into the 200, 300, 400 milliseconds, and then it's going to drive you insane. But that's what the setups look like here. If we move to, and there's a little more detail on this one, and I'm happy to back up again if you need to. Setting up the microphone, that's the first thing to do, is to set the microphone levels. It's what the microphone levels are very low coming out of the mic. You need to apply some gain to that and to feed it into the sound card and be recognized well. But you also need to sometimes you have to put an isolator in that path if there's a ground loop or something. You might plug your mic into that mic input, and you might end up getting hum. So there's an isolator, and I'll show you where you can get those. W1VE has a good link to buy some cheap ones that work pretty well. But when you set up the mic, you're going to have to go through every one of these tabs. And first is on the general tab is I didn't even show the general tab. Let me jump to this one. This one has a general tab. Sorry. If you on the general tab, that's where it gives you the option to set up the name of that device so you can recognize it later. And you're going to be monkeying with this with the audio, virtual audio cable when you do equalization, or off in the future, you're going to need to know which one is my microphone, actual microphone, which one is the one that goes into my SO2R box or into the radio, and then which is the one that comes out of the radio and which is the one that's in my ears, right? So each of those you're going to want to name in a way that you'll recognize. I called mine SO2R mic in. That's the input into the box. I called my microphone a Hi-L mic. I used to only have a Hi-L mic, and I have a couple others, but I called the actual microphone Hi-L mic, so that made it easy. When you do your setup, and I know this is there's so much to this. When you do your setup, one of the options here in the setup is listen, and this actually creates within Windows its own little virtual repeater, and allows you. I don't know if some of you folks know this or not, but if you go into an input device on in Windows and you go to the listen tab, you have the option to take that audio that's going into that and directly pipe it to something that you can monitor. So you can set your microphone levels up so there's no distortion, and you can check to see if there's no buzz by using this option. You don't have to go on off. I mean, I'm going to talk a little bit later about the virtual audio cables and audio repeaters. That's another level of complexity. But if you're just doing the setup, you can use the Windows listen tab. So you click listen, pick the device you want to listen to your microphone through, and then click apply. That'll get you so you can immediately just talk into the microphone, and you'll hear it in either your headset or your speakers on your from the computer to be able to set that level right. On the custom settings, I mean, generally you're going to want to remove the DC unless you have an electret microphone that needs phantom power, they call it. Most microphones that you're going to run, the Hi-Ls or even the Yamaha, CM500s that are pretty popular and cheap, you don't want DC bias on that. So you remove the DC bias. Often you'll want a little extra boost. If you have a 20 dB boost button, click that, and then adjusting the mic level is on the levels tab. Pretty straightforward. You adjust that until you get the sound you want. We may tweak that a little bit, later when we hook up to the rig, but generally this is not critical in setting up how you drive the rig, but it's critical in getting the right amplification out of your microphone and into the radio. One last thing before I open for questions, because I'm bound to be some. On each of these devices, this is kind of an important piece. You wonder, you've got this sample rate. On the advanced tab, there's, sampling. You want studio quality, CD quality, uber extra quality. I think there's a even faster sample rate on some of the newer computers. 48 kilohertz or 48 kilohertz is a good choice. There's a reason for that when we come to the virtual audio cables, but the most important thing is that they're all the same sample rate. This becomes kind of it becomes a thing later on if you're mixing two sounds together. If they're at a different sample rate, then the clock rates are different and they get all screwed up. So just keep them all the same. 48 kilohertz is the way to go. I probably didn't do as good a job as I hoped I would do there, but anybody have questions on this Windows sound section and setup?
I got a question, K1RX here.
Hey, Mark.
How you doing? I find with my Windows platform, I'm not sure quite honestly where I got it, but it's sitting on the PC, Windows 10. Anytime I make an adjustment to the audio level, because it's okay, forgive me, it's not registered. It automatically defaults back to 50%. You know, if I try to increase the volume on, be it the microphone, be it the audio level out, the output, the headphones, every time I finish with that window, it automatically jumps back to 50%. There's, unless you register this Windows platform, you can't get the full capability of that, volume control, if you know what I mean.
Oh, that's interesting. Well, I mean, mine's set at 52% is a good level for me. So maybe there's a way to tweak it so the 50% works, but that's the same thing for all of your other things too, right? The outputs default to some value.
Yeah, it all defaults to 50%. Actually, as it turns out, 50% is fine, but just the mere fact that I can't go greater than that, or when I go through in a setup scenario and I crank the thing up for whatever reason, it won't stay there, of course, when I X out of that window.
That's a scotch annoying.
No kidding.
Yeah, I know in N1MM in the audio setup section, there is a volume level I think you can set there, and that will override what's on your sound system. So you might check that out. And, it might be someplace where you're, running with a Stream Deck. There is some, capability there to actually set levels with a button push. So you might, and maybe there are other ways to do it too. I might have you've sparked interest, and maybe I'll figure out something for you, a little batch file you can just execute and set the levels that you want automatically.
Okay. Well, I haven't really explored what's on the N1MM audio line to see what the volume adjust is, but I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, but I know there's something in there. I've run into it where it's changed my level on me. Like, where'd that come from? Like, oh.
Yeah.
Then,
Oh, another person with an unregistered Windows platform.
oh, maybe. Yeah. Mine, I think, is registered. But
okay.
Anyway, I'm no judging. I mean, I guess that's I had no no knowledge that was a thing on unregistered copy. So I'm glad I have a registered copy.
Yeah, that's probably why you can get to 52, where I can only go to 50.
Yeah, I mean, I know I can go to 100.
Yeah,
not 11.
Yeah, there you go. We've answered the question.
Yeah,
I'm just too cheap to register.
Yeah, and I started this off by saying I'm cheap, and I mean it's Windows 10. I don't think I ended up paying for it. It came on a machine with Pro stuck on it, so that's just the way it is, I guess.
Okay.
Sorry about that. Similar for the radio, to set up the radio input, which is the playback device, right? So that is your your path coming out of the radio into the computer. Or actually, no, I take that back. I'm mixing myself up. This microphone is the input, is the microphone into the computer, and this next one is the radio input, which is a playback device, but it's actually a microphone input into your radio, but it's a playback device from the computer. 100%, you're going to want to make sure this is set at 4800 hertz, 48,000 hertz also, to match the microphone input. These two are going to be linked, right? So you're going to be speaking into your microphone, and it's going to be going out of this path into your radio. So you definitely, when these two signals are flowing through the sound card, you want them to be sampled at the same rate, and make sure they match. That's super important. And this is where this level here, when we adjust this particular level, this is what feeds into the mic input in your radio. So that's what you would end up ultimately setting your ALC for. You would talk into you'd have, when this is all set up and it's piped into your radio input, you're talking on your microphone, step on the push to talk, uh, and watch the ALC. You get your mic gain to be where you'd like it. Maybe, it's, the 1/3 level. So if you have, 0 to 30, things going to be set to 10, your mic gain on the radio, and then you'll adjust this quote master speakers output to get the right gain into the rig. And there's a little bit of a game to play, right? If you bring this all the way up to 100 and you can't drive the ALC appropriately on your radio, you would adjust the mic gain there. But my recommendation would be to make sure you're not running full bore out of the computer. You don't want to run anything full bore. That's when you end up getting distortion. But about 2/3 of the way up would be the highest you'd want to go without, generally without distorting. So you're running that level and then tweak the mic gain on your computer to get to, or excuse me, on the radio to get to the right level. So there is that. You might need to adjust the mic gain a little bit. It does have a little bit of a play here. They do feed each other a scotch, but this is sort of it's kind of an ALC in a way. You get a signal feeding into this output, and that goes off to the rig, and this level sets that output almost independent of what the input is. A little bit. I don't know if that made sense to y'all. But we can do a live bit of this too. I mean, I don't have a problem with showing how these all play together. With running on the screen live and using live audio, we can monkey around. If we have time to do that, I don't mind. So that was on the Gazinta path into the radio on the mic. The listen path is pretty much the same thing, but is a lot more forgiving. You don't have to worry about getting the mic gain adjusted just right. You're dealing with higher level signals coming out. Because you're running from the microphone or from the radio headphones output or line out. You can do line out. I prefer the phones output, and I'll tell you why in a minute. But the phones are going into the computer. You may get a ground loop there, so that might be another place where you'd put a line isolator. You want the two places you consider a line isolator are from your actual microphone into the computer, and then you want the other mic input is from the radio into the sound card in the computer. So any of the Gazintas into the sound cards, you might want to have a line isolator in there to break up any ground loop and get rid of hum and potentially hiss as well. I mentioned I use the phone output rather than line out. A lot of times when you read the documentation on how to set up for RTTY or how to set up for, FT8, just take your line output and run it in, and, that's what you want to use to configure your program. But in the case like where I have it set up, where I want to be able to easily switch between phone and RTTY and FT8, I'm going to use the same output path that I'm listening to normally to drive the digital modes. There's actually a bit of a benefit to that. I mean, I'm not going to have a fixed level that's set, but typically, because it's so easy to reach the volume knob, and actually that's what we're talking about, the output into the computer now is adjusted by the volume knob on the radio, or the AF knob. You set it for when you're doing regular phone contesting, and when you fire up WSJT or whatever you're using for RTTY, quick check of the levels look a little off. You just change the volume just a little bit, and you get the green line on WSJT or whatever to drop to where you like it. It becomes second nature in a way, but it's super easy and a natural response to grab that knob and change it. On the input side, when you're driving signal into the radio, you don't have to do a thing. I mean, it's already a fixed level. You've got that set up, so it's driving the ALC appropriately for your voice or RTTY or FT8. The only thing you have to adjust is, potentially is the path into the WSJT program or whatever. And it's so easy to grab the knob and just tweak it a little bit. As a matter of fact, you'll know exactly where, it's at the 9 o'clock position would be where you fire RIDI. And if you're late in a contest when your ears are getting kind of soft and you're running at, more like 50% volume, you'll know to turn that down. But anyway, I tend to use the phone's output rather than line out. Line out means I've got two more things to merge and kind of a pain. Okay, that's I think the setup path other than hardware. The questions on that one, I know there's a lot. Mark had that question. We had two questions. One on rig audio. If you use the sound card in a rig, how does that play into this? I think it makes it a little more complicated. Personally, I'd avoid it just because I'm not familiar with it. And the other was, the levels in Windows getting reset. I was hoping at this point folks would be able to go, hey, yeah, I could set that up. But I'm thinking folks are thinking, no, that's way too complicated for me to set up. Where are you guys at?
I have a TS990. I don't have to worry about that.
Okay.
The TS990 has all that kind of stuff already in it.
It does. Okay.
Yeah.
So have you used two radios, considered using two radios yet?
I don't really need, on my Kenwood team, that has 4 outputs. I can use 4, 2 different, more than, most of the time I'm just using one.
Okay. Yeah, well, it's nice when it's all set up that way. So you'll benefit maybe from there's a couple parts to this presentation and microphone choice and
Yeah, I'm using like the Electra voice, the Electra voice there.
Okay. Yeah, and you have an awesome distinct voice. I know if I tune by you on the radio, I'm stopping.
Yeah.
There is something to that. Okay.
Hey, this is Rudy. I can
Hey,
actually
Rudy.
answer. I can actually answer the question. What happens if you have two radios? It works beautifully, right? I'm not a phone operator. However, I have loaned the station to others, and it really doesn't make any difference how many radios you have. Each radio creates a pair of USB devices, input and output.
Yep.
And it makes absolutely no difference whether or not you have a physical card or the USB codec. Frankly, as I was listening to this run, I'm like, I am so grateful that I don't have an old radio and I don't have to deal with this because this is way, way, way too much work. USB radios make it a walk in the park.
Yeah, you can kind of do that you're using like left channel, right channel kind of thing too to switch between radios if you were doing that like through N1MM.
No, you have full-blown codecs for each radio. So if you plug two, excuse me, 2 Icoms or 2 Kenwoods or whatever, you get twice the number of ports. So in the case of the Icom, you will get 2 ports per radio. I believe in the case of the Kenwood, you would get 4. So again, it doesn't really change anything except that the routing between the different cards and the different paths becomes really, I would not use the word trivial, but my God, it's so much simpler.
Yeah. I can see that, right? Because you're not having to yeah, and I'm wondering where do you put your microphone? Where do you hook the microphone up? If you have a single microphone for the 2 radios, where does it go?
So the guys that have borrowed my station, they bring their SO2R boxes. So
Okay.
nothing really changes. They plug the microphone into the SO2R box and then they feed each radio. But again, they don't need any additional wires to bring the to audio in and out.
Right.
Also listening your comments on digital, that's the other beauty of it, because the audio for the digital comes from the USB codec. You can actually plug your headphones either in the SO2R box or directly into the radio, and you can control the volumes independently. Going back to
Right.
your comment around really, I usually don't even bother listening to the radio. I would turn it all the way down, and
Yeah,
that
me
does
too.
not impact at all what's going into the computer. I don't think one is better, fundamentally better than the other. It's just different.
Yep.
Uh, and it depends how you want to prioritize your time and efforts.
Yeah, well, you can't hurt my feelings about this at all. I mean, I grew up with the older stuff, and that's kind of what I'm using. The new things are, pretty awesome in how they work.
Well, and the reality is a lot of people have the old radios, so
Yeah,
you cannot push one solution and expecting that it's work for everybody. So
that's right.
fascinating presentation. Thank you so much.
Oh, no
Good.
worries, no
Was good.
worries. Yeah, yeah, it's that's pretty cool to have that, with the sound cards built in. I think I can start to wrap my head around that, and how that interfaces. It's, less work for sure.
And
So
with mine, I have a display. I can see how either how the FSK or the RIDI is actually. I can see a visual display scope. I can see how the signal looks what I'm putting out too.
yeah, that's handy. On these, I'll show you the images going forward here in the audio repeaters, which are, just, how you like virtually wire things together. There are, the same kind of things. You can watch the audio levels and, make sure that it's functioning well. But it's how you do it if you don't have the pair of sound cards in each rig and whatnot. Uh, yeah, and you've got the isolation built in there too, so you don't have that to
Right.
worry. Kind of neat. Uh, these are a couple on Jerry's site, remote.radio. He's been, promoting that a little bit. Has some, pretty cheap access to, isolators. I got a bunch of these. I haven't used them yet because I have, some audio, actual sound engineering quality coupling transformers in the loop here because I ended up getting them from W1JZ, N1JZ. Mike used to be an audio engineer, but these would work just as well, just what I happen to have. So moving on to the, another complicated piece of this, kind of sorta. I'm not trying to make it complicated, but the virtual audio cable, it's free for one cable, and a cable being defined as how to make one device output connect to another device input virtually, right? So the that at the early in the presentation, I showed how I had a line one uh, output that was fed by the output of my radio and the output of my microphone. Both of those went into that one cable. That would be the wave in section here, and then came out on line one. That would go into my recording system. So if I want to record the whole contest and get both radios and my audio, that's where it goes. So it goes into that one virtual audio cable. What a repeater does, and this is, you can set up as many of these you want from this site, Muschenko's site. You can have as many audio repeaters as you want. What the audio repeater does is the actual, it makes the connection. So this cable makes devices, makes an input and output device that are an input output device, and you would connect them by a repeater. Hopefully that makes some sense, but the cable creates the endpoints, and the repeater allows you to plug an endpoint into any particular place. So how you set that that up, you install the virtual audio cable, double click on the program, it fires up pretty much stock as it sets here, fires up a panel to create the virtual audio cable. So it creates the parameters for either end of that cable, the endpoints, the input and the output side of the cable. Actually, they're reversible, right? One goes to the other and the other goes to the one. But it automatically matches the sample rates and does all that for you. So you only need this if you want to merge a couple things together. If you want to have a separate port that has some particular audio, and again, in my case, it's the rig's audio and the mic audio goes to one spot. Not required to do just the straight up setup. What is though, and this is really what I taught early when I talked about setting up your microphone, you can click the listen button and have that uh, the input get fed to one of the output devices you have or playback devices you have set up on the computer. This allows you to do the same thing. These audio repeaters, and I have four of them. Well, three of them I have three of them set up. One of them takes my microphone. I call it mic to SO2R. It takes my microphone and feeds it to the input of the SO2R box. The other one takes my the rig output. I call it rigs to phones, and that sends it to the device that I plug my headphones into. So it would be my rig phones. There's some settings to wonder about here that are kind of important. These are to set up these repeaters so you can listen to yourself and change your audio anywhere. You need to have the lowest. You want the lowest latency possible, but lower latency means a lot of CPU power. So if you set this up to have the uh, 500, let's say 50 milliseconds of initial buffer latency, your computer is going to get totally bogged down and your audio is going to sound more like this if I'm doing a good job of what it sounds like when you have a bad connection. That's exactly what ends up happening here. So what I found is, the settings that I show here, this 48,000 bits per sample is 32. The buffer in this case is 200 milliseconds, but that's broken up into 8 buffer parts. So it's 200 divided by 8 is actually your latency that ends up happening. This setup I found works pretty well for me. This is definitely a confusing concept. Once you start using it, you can kind of figure out how this goes. And it's easiest to show you live, quite frankly, how this ends up working. But this looks more complicated than it actually is when you run one of these. And actually, let me see if I can just do that. I've got a couple of them running here.
Hey, Ron, quick question before you
Sure.
go into the demo. And I meant to ask you this question earlier. Sure. Why are you running the sound cards at such a high sampling rate? Right? Purely from an engineering perspective, makes no difference anything higher than twice the input frequency, which in the case of ham radio is like 3 kilohertz. So why not sample at 8 kilohertz?
Excellent question. And you're reminding me that's something to touch on here, is that the sample rate. So when it comes to these audio repeaters and chopping up your audio to pass it from one place to another, it's going to do it based on the clock rate of the sample rate of that signal. So if you're sampling at, I'll just say, I forget what the lowest is. What is it, 8 kilohertz?
Yeah, 8 kilohertz.
You're sampling at 8 kilohertz. That means, when you go to sample a piece of that audio data, you're doing it at an 8 kilohertz rate. You're throwing it into buckets that you're throwing it into 32 buckets and then filling up a buffer. And it takes a while. Your latency ends up building up pretty quickly. So you can easily get a half a second of latency built up when you're running at a slower clock rate. When you run at these faster clock rates, it chops the data faster. Your CPU is able to handle it. So you can take that little bit of data and move it over quickly. So that speed that you're doing that at allows it, that's where your latency comes from. So if you do that, in 2 or 3 milliseconds, bam, you take that and you transfer it over versus having to wait for 50, 60 milliseconds before you fill that buffer and then move it over. You're throwing in delay, and each of these has it's double the delay. So the Gazinta's got to transfer it over, and then coming out when you listen to it has to transfer over as well. So it kind of builds up quick. But that's the reason you take the highest rate you can that your computer is okay dealing with. And the 48 kilohertz is not a problem for any of these things today.
Yeah.
Unless you're running with a Stone Age box, and then you're kind of hosed. But yeah, that's why. It's from an audio perspective, Nyquist and what your ear hears, 8K is fine, totally fine. But this is where it becomes important.
Fascinating, totally counterintuitive, but now
Yeah.
that you explained it, it makes sense.
Yes, it is counterintuitive. It's 100% counterintuitive, and it burned me before. And that's also where you get, if the sample rates are divergent, if they're different, then you're filling the buffer on one at one rate and then filling it on the other, and they don't, you're gonna get overflows or underflows in those digital paths. So, yeah, glad you asked that question. You reminded me about that being the number one reason to pick a higher sample rate. But yeah, often 8K is available, and it's counterintuitive, but absolutely. So I'll show this when we do a little bit of the demo. I can show how this setup goes. It's actually way easier than talking about. So you stick it up, and once you set these things up, it's easy to enable them, right? Or this looks complicated. This is I have. Oops, sorry. I want to highlight the screen, but here is what the config file ends up looking like when you create this window. Here, you can output. You can save the config. You press the save config, and it makes a file that you can then reapply. It's kind of like Mark was talking about. Hey, my levels get screwed up. This thing, you can run this and boop, it fires up all the parameters that you had. It doesn't set your level, Mark, sorry, but it fires up all the parameters that you had, your sample rate, how many channels, buffer size, all of that, and gets it set up so it'll connect your radio to your headphones. Then you run the other one, which connects your microphone to your radio. Then I have another one which connects my radio to my speakers so I can listen externally. And those are the three important ones. The other two I run are radio output to that line one, and then the mic output to line one. So a total of five when I'm actually running. Two of them feed into an output that all I do is record from. So you really just need three. And if you call these sample files, if you call these config files from a batch file, which I mean, for folks that have been around the computers a long time, not a problem, do a batch file. But folks that haven't, I mean, it's really not that big a deal. You put these commands into a file, you have it in your startup folder. When you boot your computer, whoop, these things all start up. Or if you have, icons on your desktop, you can like turn off all the audio. So your audio goes away and you double click on another one and it fires up all your audio. Or if you're running with a Stream Deck, you just press a button there and you can do all kinds of things. And there's a benefit about that one that I'll cover in a moment. But it's not really so hard to replicate the work that you end up doing once you get it all finished. Again, right at the beginning, I said this is not a. It seems daunting at first, but it's actually not quite so bad. So questions on that one? I suspect there might be. We did have the one about the sample rate. Why such a high sample rate?
Yeah. So I guess just a comment. I found there are some warnings in his documentation that you might have to run the BAC as an administrator. I found that I had to on my system. So right click and then run as administrator is one comment. On the I forgot my second comment, I guess.
Okay.
Oh, are you running the MME? What is it, MME or versus the KS, the kernel?
I'm running the MME version, not the. There's
Yeah.
it's a good point. There are two versions of this. One that runs at the kernel level. It's KS. That's don't need to run that one. I mean, it's a little lower latency, but it's way more complicated. Run the MME version, which uses, and MME is just, it's an acronym, and I can't regurgitate it, but it means that it's using the Windows defined devices and the Windows APIs to transfer the audio.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the one to run. And I think I have my virtual audio cable. It fires up automatically when I boot. And I think that's one of the settings you can click on when you set it up is restart audio service, sound settings. You can set it so it runs at start, and this one, and it can automatically run as administrator.
Okay.
You got. What did I not do on this one? Interesting. For the Stream Deck. So, oh yes, for the virtual audio cable. I don't know if any of you guys or if folks out there are familiar with the Stream Deck at all. I just got turned onto it, maybe 4 months ago. Pretty awesome little thing. It's, well, I don't know if I can reach it up there. It kind of looks like, switch video inputs here. Hang on a second. Well, actually, no, never mind. But it's a programmable button set for your computer, and each of the buttons has an LCD screen behind it. Actually, it's one big LCD screen, but each button has a changeable view, so you can have it. And one of the features of this, it has an audio setup, and this I'm going to save this one for the live demo, because that makes it much better. How are we running for time? I may run into trouble there, but let's go through. This is going to be interesting to folks, I think, too, is the microphone and equalization. So we talked about how we pipe audio here, there, and everywhere on the computer, but why does it sound good, right? So we have the convenience of setting up on the through the computer, but what makes your audio sound good? There are the SSB folks and others who, like full audio sound. And I have to say, it does sound great. Full audio. I mean, and I can switch. Let me, this might be I don't know if I can switch on the fly here. But yeah. Yeah, let's change to the Heil mic. So this is my CM500. I don't know what it sounds like to you guys. Maybe it's fuller, maybe it's not. But conventional wisdom says that, broad audio sounds nice, and it's true, but only when you're loud. If you got weak guys that have broad audio, they're hard to copy. I mean, and what we're talking about in contesting here is trying to be heard in off situations, right? Where the other station's having trouble copying you 160 meters, and in the summer trying to make a contact and it's nothing but noise. How do you break out of that? You don't do it with broad, nice audio. Focusing your audio so you have the intelligibility content somewhere between 1K and 3K. Maxed, not totally maxed, but that's where your energy goes, makes it much more, it sounds much better, or it breaks through the noise, and often pileups better than others. Microphone choice, I know what I like. I'm not an expert here, but I do know what I like. I've been using a Ohio Pro Set for an awful long time. The classic version that's up on my shelf, I recently replaced it with a Pro 7, which I'm not so sure it was the best choice, but I did. And then this Yamaha CM500, which sometimes I take with me on the road because I don't mind if it breaks. It's cheap. This was a full spectrum mic, and I'll show you in a bit why you can definitely punch it up a bit. Most of the rigs, and I guarantee the ones with the built-in USB sound cards, have some pretty fancy and very capable equalization. The K3's got an 8-band equalizer built in. You can go plus and minus 16 decibels on these fixed frequencies here, 50 up through 3.2K, and to adjust your audio. There we go. So what you end up wanting to do, right? We talked about broad audio being nice sounding, and I know I'm probably sounding pretty nice to you guys here. But limiting that lower end, the 400 hertz, you don't need to waste energy. At that point, many of the rigs anyway have a narrower bandwidth, which has you shifted up above, usually from 300 maybe to 3.1 or so. You want to trim the highs. So if your microphone's generating, signals up above 4 kilohertz, that's not doing you any good. So, equalizing those out of the way is not a bad idea either. But in most of the times, radios are going to transmit with, 3 kilohertz bandwidth anyway. So you're not really, by dropping out these, it's not gonna do much for you. But getting rid of those signals or lowering the signals from 0 on up to maybe 800 is worthwhile. Enhancing the mids, getting 2 to 4K. That's where you want a little bit of boost. But one thing I found too, and all of us are getting older, I have a particular, like a notch, 20 or 30 dB notch in the middle of this intelligibility band. So I use the RX equalization on the radio as well to help me listen to pileups and work people better that way. So this is kind of a two-way street. I don't touch upon this too much other than here, but your RX equalization, you should consider that. If you have hearing aids or you've had your hearing tested and you know what your hearing profile is, then you can make up for it by RX equalization in the radio. I mentioned already most of the modern rigs have transmit equalization possible. One of the things, so you can tailor your audio, but if you have a microphone that is already doesn't have much of something, let's say it doesn't have a lot of highs, it's not going to be all that easy to, I mean, it's much harder to take a tiny signal and magnify it and have it still be have good fidelity, right? But it's easy to reduce signals to get rid of something that's there. That's a much easier job, but you can do pretty decent compensation, and I'll show you with this mic in a moment or two. Simple micro commands, I've got them programmed in. That's how I have it set up on the Elecraft for this demo. I do have two mics, like I said, this CM500 and then the Heil. I have two different macro setups for that. This is what they look like. If you're familiar with a K3, you might recognize that, but those are how I tailor the audio with the macro commands. And I'll take questions in a second, but here's my commentary on the different microphones. The one that came stock with this this Pro 7 is an HC7 element, which, oh gosh, I tell you, I listened to it. I couldn't believe how it sounded poor to me. I mean, it was good audio, but not at all what I'm used to. You can see this black, response curve here where it goes from 100 hertz up to 10 kilohertz. For me, I put the red boxes where my equalization settings are, and there's a 25, maybe almost a 30 dB difference between the two, all the way up to maybe 500 hertz. It's a ginormous difference, and that's where a lot of that full sounding bass comes from. In the approaching into the mids, there's still a difference that the stock mic is not equalized much at all. But when you go to the DX element, which is kind of, this one's a replica of the HC4, which I have in this one, so you'll hear that in a second. Much more compressed in the lows. Those are almost gone. But this real important section here, the 2K, 3K, is boosted. Oh, sorry. Apologize about that. Talked fast about the equalization. Questions on that at all? You guys are probably at least as familiar with me as microphones and how to monkey with them. Okay, hopefully I do see the green.
Are those just the manufactured curves that we're looking there, or is that something that you plotted?
What was the question again?
The curves, the graphs that we're looking at there, are those just manufacturer specifications, or are those something?
Yeah, this is direct from the Heil website. I mean, I traced the black line, with in PowerPoint, and then as an overlay, so I could match them on this graph. But that's the manufacturer spec. They're usually pretty good. So the jump quick to this, and again, I'm looks like I'm gonna run late a little bit, but I'll quick through this Stream Deck. Forgot I had I added this picture in here today. This is what that Stream Deck ended up looking like, and on the right hand side is the actual picture of it. The one on the bottom left is the view you get when you run the configurator, and this is actually the same screen, right? When I press, in this case here, what I'm showing on the lower left is my audio menu. So if I press that audio menu button that you see on the right, doink, all of the keys change and look just like what I'm showing on the left. Uh, pretty nifty. They have a built-in setup where you can have input-output device control. So to automatically put in here, I have the Heil microphone. So if I press this Heil microphone, I actually said when I pressed the mic button, you can no longer hear me anymore. So I pressed that, my mic went away. I can press a button and have the headsets go mute or the speakers go mute. I can adjust the gain by pressing this button or this button. Pretty nifty setup, and that's kind of built into it. It looks like this for folks that use one. You would in the configurator, you need to click. Oops, you click on the button you want to configure and choose input device control. And there's a pull down here that gives a list of all the devices. So I want to put the Heil mic in as a mute. So I just set it up like that, and bam, there it is. It's ready to go with the microphone symbol there, and I just have to type Heil in the title. Sorry, Heil in the title, and it shows up as Heil. For the gain up, gain down, you have these other two options. It's the fader. If you set this step size to a positive, it gives you the upper one. If you set the step size to negative, it gives you the lower one. So anytime you press that upper or lower button, it'll increment your sound by that level. This is something that Mark would benefit by on his setup. These can also have a fixed value. So if you wanted to set this so you had a button and you just press it, bam, fixed value. There it is. It's automatically at 35 or 100 or whatever. Same for the audio repeater setup. You can also get it to set up to mute something. If you want, if you're doing, for example, one of these that you use it for is, if you're an FT8, you get your headset on. The last thing you want to listen to is all that noise from FT8. Riddy, I know you want to tune, but I press the button here that says radios to speakers, or I press my headset mute, and I don't have to hear it anymore. But it still goes into the program, which is kind of nice. In the case where you change your volume, you're screwing up your program, so you end up having to listen to it. So this is a way of doing that mute. So I know we're running a bit late, but I will take questions. Hang on a second. Let me move my audio to my listen audio to my headset, which I can do. To rig phones. Yeah, so that should. No, I don't want rig phones. Sorry. I want to be listening to. Yeah, I do. Rig phones is fine. So let me change over as well, and what you're gonna hear in a.
So now you hear an entirely different audio, I suspect. Can you guys hear me okay? Did that audio come through?
I'll ask with this microphone. Did that audio happen to come through?
Yes, it did, Ron.
Oh, okay. Great. So this is I will go back.
And now what you're listening to is I'm transmitting with my right radio, listening to the left. You're listening to the audio coming out of the left radio. Let me see how my equalization is set. Okay, so I'm set with flat equalization. You're listening through a 6 kilohertz wide filter on the left case through. That's not how I run normally, but I tried to get as broad audio as I could. So this is the CM 500 with no equalization. Probably sounds a little bit compressed compared to what it was before. But if I change to boosting the highs and removing the lows, then it sounds like this. He can probably tell the difference. Definitely a little bit punchier, I imagine. But is the audio clear enough to you guys? This is the
Yep.
first time I've ever demoed over Zoom.
Yep, it sounds good. Sounds good. Sounds like contest audio.
Sounds like contest audio, yeah. So when I go back to the flat EQ, this is unmodified, microphone, the CM500. And the only other thing I'll do here, take me 1 second. Is to switch to the High-L HC4. So this is a raw H. So wait, let me see my flat. Yeah, so I'm running flat equalization, and this is just the HC4 element on the High-L that you can see if you're watching my video as well. But yeah, so that's the difference in equalization makes. I can double equalize this, and you'll probably be super annoyed. Hang on. So this is what it sounds like if I apply the equalization that I did to the CM500 to the High-L. So it's kind of way super annoying, I think. Do you agree?
Yep.
It's very understandable, though. The one microphone you had with the flat equalization was really hard to understand. I'm not sure whether the codec that Zoom is implementing was complicating things, but I was missing syllables.
Yeah, it's entirely possible, and I mean it's not real life. Unfortunately, going over that codec, but yeah, I find this I love this audio. I find that this sounds quite nice, and I still stare in my screen. That's good. So if you see my screen here, you'll see those audio repeaters that I was talking about. You can see the levels moving on each of them. Let me move this one out of the way. These are the two that kind of matter. This one here on the top is my microphone to the microphone that I'm talking into out into the radio. So that's that one path. You can see it's mono. I just have that one channel moving. It's the mono channel. But one of the things I can do, I think if I stop this. Now I have to start it for you guys to hear me. If you change these settings in the wrong way, you get a bunch of underflows and overflows. Actually, let me do that quickly. You're probably not going to understand me.
Yeah, it's all broken up. Yep.
Yeah, I know it was broken up. I kind of intentionally did that, maybe too much. But if you watch these underflows and overflows, it was just too much for the computer to handle. I tried to break the audio up in 20 millisecond chunks divided by 8, which is just, and it's trying to transfer that audio so fast, couldn't handle it. So a little counterintuitive, this is set up as a 200 millisecond buffer, but these buffer parts are set up as 8, so it's divided by 8. So your initial voice comes in 200 milliseconds late, which is really nothing from a startup point of view. But then your pipe fills up and your audio sounds like it's not delayed at all with this setup. It's just right. So anyway. So that's a little bit about how the audio changes. You guys, before I go back to the other mic, are you good with this one?
I'll go back to the other mic.
The other mic I heard. Okay.
Yeah. Just the comment. The repeaters. The ones the default settings appear to be 112. I don't know if they adjust that based on your computer performance or not, but that's what mine defaulted to when I started them up. We're not hearing you, Ron.
Oh, now you can hear me, right?
Yep, there you are.
All right. Yeah, switching microphones a little. I'm not used to having to demo this and switch mics on the fly.
really not something I normally do. Yeah, so for the, if it's buffer size of 100, sometimes it could be a bit tight. If what you'll find of these overflows and underflows are kind of important. That's where you got that choppy sound that I had when I was running with the, too small a buffer. You get the same thing if your bits per sample are too low as well. You want to, this 32 seems to be pretty good. I think 64 is max, but play around with it is what you kind of have to do. Play around with these to get the least delay. And I'd recommend doing it with the headset on, right? So you're into the radio, so press your push to talk, so you're listening to your monitor, right? So you're monitoring yourself coming out of your radio. That's what you're going to hear when you're actually contesting or whatever. You're going to that slight delay in your headset. You want to sort of minimize that, and to minimize that, you end up stressing the computer a little bit. So there's a break point where, if you go too far, you'll get choppy. But yeah, so if the default works for you, yeah, heck, just use it. It's totally fine. If you got to play, the only thing I suggest, and I'm happy to talk somebody through it if they get into it, because I'm probably boring you silly, with all of this detail. But if you end up needing to set it up and you need a coach, that's not a problem. The buffer, the bits per sample, and then the buffer parts all kind of play together to tweak the performance. And a high bits per bits is good. Buffer parts at 8 or 16 is okay. 16 might be pushing it, but buffer size. If you go too much more, 100 might work for you, but lower than that, it's going to get stinky.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What do you use for if you want to record the contest? What do you use for the application for that?
I use the from the N1MM toolbox, the QS order.
Oh, no
This
kidding.
guy.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean again, there might be better things out there. It's a little bit tricky to use, but I end up using this and choose the line in as my recording path. And my line in is what I had set up as my radio output and my mic output merging. If you don't have that merged together, you end up getting one or the other, or you have to run with your monitor on all the time, and your monitor on at a level enough that it can get recorded at the same. It has to be the same level as the audio out of your radio, at least on a non-USB sound card radio. I don't know how they have it configured for if you're able to merge your mic audio with your radio audio in those devices. Maybe somebody who has one can tell me.
You have to run the monitor.
Yeah, so you do have to run the monitor. Yeah, so what this allows you to do is you can set your levels independently, using the sound, the Windows sound device for those two pieces. You can adjust the level. It's controlled by the volume plus how much you amplify your mic into the line in port. And you can always, replicate, Anyway, there's two ways to it. You can adjust the volume independently and feed it into that one line in, and that's what you end up recording. So it gets you the merged audio. Works pretty well. But yeah, I use QSO order for that. And it's part of the N1MM toolbox. So that will automatically break up your recordings per contact. So when you log a contact, you can set it up variable, but you can set it up. Well, I have it set up to record. I think it's 45 seconds. So it records 45 seconds of a contact, and including the previous. I think 30 seconds before you hit the enter key. So you're making your contact, trying to bust the pile up. You finally hit enter. Doink, it takes that 45 seconds and saves it. And mine's set up so it saves the 30 seconds before and the 30 second and the I think 10 seconds after I hit enter. This is how it's set up. And it doesn't take up much space. You'd think that 45 seconds per queue in a contest where you make 2,000 contacts is going to bust your disk drive. It's like I don't know. It's maybe 30 meg or something. It's crazy how small they are. Maybe
All
not
right.
exactly that small. Um, yeah, so I busted the time limit by 15 minutes. I didn't get into, this Stream Deck control here. There's I have the my top level screen. I'm no intention of going into all the other things like the, rig control or, rotor control that I've got set up on there. But the audio control is pretty nice, where you can, just like I can mute my microphone to you and you'll red X there, and if I'm talking with that slash through there, I actually just swore at you guys when I had it pressed. No, I didn't. I just said I did, but I didn't. Mute your headset so I don't have to listen to you. I can mute my desktop, so I don't have to listen to that. Can adjust the volume, by pressing the buttons. Uh, my and this auto button, and actually what that does, I mean, I should touch on this just briefly. All of these audio repeaters I set up, as far as Windows is concerned, the actual repeater itself doesn't have a unique name. They're all called audio repeater something. And in order to, so if I want to set my setup. So, and one of mine is to mute the speakers to mute the audio coming from or into my headset, I guess I should say. But I want to or mute this. I want to turn off the path. I want to turn off this audio repeater here so I do not take audio from the radio and pipe it to the front speakers. So it's a little bit different than a mute. I want to stop the audio flow from my radio to the front speakers. So in order to do that, I have to find out which of the 5 audio repeaters this is. You run auto mode, find out which one of these I can mute, and it's this 4th one that is set up for my radio. Then when I come to set up this particular guy, I would choose the 4th audio repeater device from here to be the one that I actuate. But anyway, that's probably a little bit deep, and I'm sure you didn't follow it. But nonetheless, it's the Stream Deck is a pretty convenient thing to control your audio with a single button without having to go over here and having to press the sound shortcut and bring up the sound control and then find the speaker's audio and then go and mute it or whatever. It's way easier than all that. And here actually, I mean, you can kind of see on this playback device, you can see the audio that's coming out of the SO2 box to our box here. You see the audio that's going into my line in, like that virtual line in. I call it, well, used to be the 1000 MP, but it's the radio audio plus the Heil mic. So you can see how that varies with my speaking. And it goes exactly with this up here. So those are piped together, which works all right. And if I press, actually I'm pressing to transmit at the same time, you can see my rig phones now is moving a little bit. So it's pretty low audio output because that's feeding a mic input. So it doesn't move very much. It's pretty low. But anyway, so you can see that when I let up on my push to talk, that all goes away. Anyway, there's some live stuff. So I'll stop boring you now, or
We could almost do a whole talk on the Stream Deck itself,
Oh my God! Oh, you could. Oh, for that, and I didn't want to. Yes, you absolutely can. It's if you get one. I wondered if I was going to use it. It's like, oh, it's kind of neat. It's a toy. I don't mind tech, but oh my gosh, it's nuts, right? I can, if I'm doing, if I want to set up the radio to be, see, you got me started. Like to run FT8, I want to put it in data mode and I want to mute this and do that. So I just press WXDT ready. Bam, it sends, I don't know, a whole suite of commands to put me in data mode. I have to be in N1MM running, but put me in data mode, do this, that, and the other thing, and I'm ready to go. Because I mean, I want a zero beat a station. I'm working a pile up, right? And I want to on the split. There's somebody who's, he just worked this guy and I heard him. I can, zero beat the radio with a push rather than, I don't know. Anyway, yes, you could do a whole class on it. Sorry.
All right, Ron. We are losing a little bit of our audience here. So
I know.
Any final questions?
I'm a rambly speaker, so I apologize about that.
This was excellent. It was excellent.
I'm happy to have, if you need help setting some of this stuff up, even want to try it, let me know. I'm happy to talk you through it. We can do a Zoom or something, and yeah. But
yeah, just from a new user's perspective, I did have this. I downloaded the Mozichenko thing. Played around with it a little bit yesterday. This morning, I sat down, and within about an hour, I had my gaming headsets, which is a USB headset, connected to my FT5000, so I didn't have cables that I'm tripping over when I stand up and everything. And then I also created a path so that I could do the record on the fly. So I have actually 5 repeaters running to do what I just described. There might be some efficiencies there that I'm missing, but it was, within an hour, I had all of that working. Now, I haven't had record on the fly capability for years because the audio out that I use from the FT5K doesn't have the monitor audio. And there's a long story behind that, of course, but just basically means I couldn't set up messages on the fly. So I'm actually pretty excited about using it this weekend, especially on 40.
Yeah, right. When you're having to, you're running split and yeah. No, it works. It works kind of nice for that. That was what got me into it. The rest of it is gravy. But seriously, being able to record your audio on the fly with the control shift, press a key, and you don't even have to transmit when you do it either. You can you be listening and and do that recording as well. Then it's ready to go when you. So you don't have to do it transmit at the same time either. But anyway,
very good.
All right. So thanks for putting up with me, guys. I hope I was useful to some of you.
Yeah, we did record this. I missed like the first 10 seconds of your introduction, but we'll get this cut up and put up on the YouTube channel so other people can see it.
Oh, I'll watch it and embarrass myself.
There you go.
It's the way it works. But thanks for putting up with me, guys. I know you guys are all, been doing this a long time. Some of you longer than me. Well, many of you longer than me. I've only been in it since '93. So, yeah. Anyway, thanks so much. Nice to see y'all. Oh, I see Will joined late. Brian, howdy. Hey, Will, if you need to hang on for questions, you got some shite going on, right? I don't know if you're still at your rig or not. You had some questions that you're bouncing around, I think, on Stream Deck. Must be gone.
I don't see him.
That was quick.
All right, then.
All right. We'll see you.
Yeah. Thank you so much again. And that about wraps it for tonight, guys. It's a little bit later than we expected, but hopefully you enjoyed that.
Yeah, don't give Ron the microphone. That's the lesson.